My name is Adrian, and the first time the world laughed at me, I bought the building they were laughing at. The Grand Arcadia Hotel stood at the dead end of a street everyone had forgotten. Half its windows were missing. Rainwater ran through the lobby like a narrow river. The gold letters over the entrance had fallen one by one until the sign only said Grand A. Even the rats had moved somewhere with better reviews. The city had tried to sell it for years. Nobody wanted the cost of keeping it standing, and nobody wanted the shame of being the fool who finally took it. So when the auctioneer raised a silver coin and announced that the opening price was $1, the crowd laughed before anyone even placed a bid. I lifted my hand. The laughter stopped for half a second. Then it doubled. People pointed their phones at me. A real estate streamer said I had just purchased the most expensive pile of mold in the country. A man in a spotless suit asked whether I planned to rent rooms to ghosts. Someone tossed me a paper crown and called me the King of Ruins. I caught the crown before it hit the mud. Then I placed my single dollar on the auction table. I was 22 years old. I had no investors, no famous family, and exactly $7 left after the purchase. The people filming me thought I had destroyed my future for a joke. They did not know I had seen the blue light floating above the hotel. Property acquired. Hidden asset detected. Room 404, Oracle Room. One eligible guest per night may receive a dream containing the correct actionable solution to the largest solvable problem in the guest's life. Owner privilege unlocked. Problem category, solvability, projected value, and dream stability may be viewed before entry. I read the words twice. Not because I doubted them. I never doubted what I could see with my own eyes. I read them twice because I understood, instantly, that one careless move could ruin everything. A room that answered questions was valuable. A room that solved the biggest problem in a person's life was not valuable. It was power. The difference mattered. A fool would have shouted about miracles. A fool would have invited cameras, charged $1 million, and been crushed by rich men before the week ended. A slightly smarter fool would have kept the room secret and used it for small gains until someone noticed the pattern. I had no intention of being either kind. I walked through the broken lobby while the crowd continued laughing outside. The ceiling groaned. A chandelier hung by one chain, turning slowly in the wind. Every step sent dust rolling across the marble floor. Room 404 was on the 4th floor. The staircase had collapsed between the 2nd and 3rd, so I climbed an old service ladder through an elevator shaft with a flashlight between my teeth. At the 4th floor, every door was rotten except one. Room 404 looked new, not repaired, not cleaned, new. The dark wood shined. The brass number reflected my face. When I touched the handle, the blue text returned. Oracle conditions. The guest must enter by invitation of the owner. The guest must sleep alone. The dream answers the largest problem the guest sincerely believes is real and solvable at the moment sleep begins. The answer is correct, but the guest may still fail through cowardice, delay, or refusal. Only one dream may be granted between midnight and sunrise. I smiled. The 3rd rule was the most important. The room did not answer the question a guest asked. It answered the problem that occupied the greatest space in the guest's mind. That meant the room could not simply be used. It could be aimed. I entered and found a clean bed, a black desk, a red clock, and a single window looking over the ruined city block. There was no dust, no smell, no sound from the wind outside. The bed looked ordinary, but when I sat on it, another line appeared. Current largest solvable problem, acquiring influence without exposing the Oracle Room. Solvability, 98%. Projected value, extreme. I had $7 in one night, so I became my first guest. I spent an hour controlling my thoughts. That sounds impossible to most people because most people have never controlled anything inside their own heads. Their fears pull one way, their desires pull another, and then they call the result a personality. I was different. I imagined every problem I had, then pushed each one down until only one remained. How could I reveal enough of the room to create demand, but not enough to lose control? At 12:07, I fell asleep. The dream began with a restaurant on fire. Not literally. The building was intact, but every empty table burned with blue flames. A desperate owner stood behind the counter, holding a menu with 83 items. Above him floated a clock counting down from 72 hours. Then the dream showed me a cracked ventilation pipe leaking cold grease vapor into the kitchen. It showed me a forgotten recipe written inside the back cover of an old cookbook. It showed me a local food creator searching online for a strange late-night meal. It showed me a black bowl, a tower of noodles, and steam rising in the shape of a dragon when a hidden cup of broth was poured at the table. Finally, the dream showed a line of people wrapping around the block. One sentence appeared over the restaurant. "Do not sell the miracle, sell the proof." I woke before sunrise. The room had not told me to advertise itself. It had told me to manufacture a success so visible that people would advertise it for me. By 8 that morning, I had found the restaurant. It was 6 blocks away, trapped between a pawn shop and an empty theater. The owner had slept in a booth because he could not afford to go home. His power had been shut off twice that month. He had 72 hours before he planned to close forever. I offered him one night in my hotel. He looked past me at the Grand Arcadia, then looked back at my clean coat and muddy shoes. He thought I was insane. That was useful. Desperate people ignored things that comfortable people overthought. I told him I did not want a room fee. I wanted 1% of whatever the dream helped him earn. No long speech, no pile of paper, just a promise made while he still believed he had nothing to lose. He laughed, but it was the laugh of a drowning man who had just been offered a rope made of smoke. That night, I led him through the ruins with a lantern. I did not let him see any room except 404. At 11:50, I placed his old cookbook on the black desk. At 11:55, I showed him photographs of his empty tables. At 11:58, I told him the restaurant would be gone in 3 days, and nobody would remember it had existed. The blue text over his head sharpened. Largest solvable problem, saving the restaurant. Solvability, 94%. Dream stability high. I had aimed the room. He slept. At dawn, he ran out of the hotel so fast he nearly fell through the broken staircase. For 2 days, nothing happened. The people who had filmed my purchase posted follow-up videos. They stood outside the hotel and asked whether my first guest had been eaten by the mold. Someone left a 1-star review even though the hotel was not open. I said nothing. On the 3rd night, the restaurant owner repaired the damaged vent. He removed 82 items from the menu. He found the forgotten recipe. He served 1 dish in a black bowl with a hidden chamber that released a tower of steam when broth was poured. At exactly 11:43, the food creator from my dream walked in. The video reached 10 million views before breakfast. By noon, there were 200 people outside the restaurant. By midnight, there were 600. The owner began selling numbered tickets. The empty theater next door reopened just to handle the waiting crowd. A week later, the restaurant stayed open 24 hours. A month later, there were 3 more locations. My 1% arrived as a thick envelope of cash and a note with only 4 words. The room was right. I used half the money to repair the front steps of the hotel. Only the front steps. That was important. The building still looked condemned, but now a perfect strip of white stone led through the wreckage to the lobby. At the top, I placed a narrow black carpet and 1 gold lamp. The contrast made the entrance look less like construction and more like a challenge. People came to take photographs. Then a scientist came to ask for a room. She had spent 11 years building a compact energy cell that could store power without heat. Every test ended the same way. The cell worked for 6 minutes, screamed like a boiling kettle, then melted into silver sludge. Investors had abandoned her. Her lab was being emptied. She carried a small metal case like it contained the ashes of her life. I checked the blue display above her. Largest solvable problem, identifying the fatal flaw in the energy cell. Solvability, 87%. Projected value, catastrophic to existing industries. Dream stability, medium. The words made my pulse slow. Most people become excited when they see a fortune. Excitement makes the mind clumsy. I became calmer. I asked for 1/4% of whatever the solution created. She agreed before I finished the sentence. But I did not send her upstairs immediately. Dream stability was only medium. Her problem was technically the invention, but her thoughts were divided. She hated the investors who had abandoned her. She feared public humiliation. She worried that she had wasted her life. If she entered the room like that, the dream might solve her shame instead of the machine. So I removed everything else. I cleared the lobby. I covered the broken walls with white sheets. I placed the failed energy cell on a pedestal under a single light. For 2 hours, I made her explain every component aloud. Whenever she drifted toward anger or regret, I brought her back to the machine. At 11:59, I handed her a live sensor showing the cell's temperature rising even though it was switched off. Her face changed. The blue display did too. Dream stability, perfect. She slept. At sunrise, she woke with tears in her eyes and one equation written across both arms in black marker. The flaw was not in the storage material. It was in the shape of the silence between the plates. A tiny vibration bounced through the cell, multiplied, and destroyed it from inside. The dream showed her how to bend the plates into a pattern that canceled the vibration completely. 3 weeks later, her new cell powered a city bus for 7 days. 2 months later, it powered a cargo ship. By the end of the season, her company was valued higher than the oldest oil giant in the country. My 0.25% was enough to rebuild the Grand Arcadia. I did not rebuild it normally. Normal was for hotels that sold beds. I restored the lobby in black marble and gold glass, but I left one original cracked column in the center. I repaired the chandelier, then lowered it until the lowest crystal hovered 1 inch above the crack where rainwater once ran. I built a single elevator with no buttons. It only moved when I placed my hand against the wall. The rooms on every floor remained sealed. There was still only one room that mattered. News crews arrived. Economists called the scientists' breakthrough lucky timing. Psychics claimed they had guided her spirit. A famous skeptic offered to sleep in room 404 and prove I was a fraud. I rejected all of them. The refusal created more attention than acceptance ever could, and the chief executive of a giant shipping company arrived at midnight without cameras. Money had been disappearing from his business for 3 years, not a little. Enough to buy a fleet of private islands. He believed one of his top executives was stealing from him, but every investigation failed. The thief knew the company too well, and erased every trail before anyone could follow it. The chief executive offered me $10 million for 1 night. I refused. His expression hardened. Powerful people are often confused by the first person who does not become smaller in front of them. I told him I wanted 1% of the value recovered after he removed the thief. He asked what happened if the room gave him nothing. I told him he would lose 1 night of sleep. He asked what happened if it worked. I told him he would spend the rest of his life remembering that he had once needed me. He accepted. The blue display above him showed a problem with very high solvability, but the category was wrong. Largest solvable problem, deciding which executive deserves trust. That was too soft. Trust was emotional. I needed theft. So I designed a game. I told him to summon his 7 highest executives to 7 different company warehouses and give each one a different false emergency. One would hear that a ship had vanished. One would hear that a port was closing. One would hear that the company's accounts had been frozen. Each lie was chosen to force a different reaction from the thief. At 11:40, reports began arriving. 6 executives responded with confusion. The 7th quietly moved money. I showed the chief executive a live map of the transfer beginning, and then cut the screen before it revealed where the money went. His largest problem changed instantly. Largest solvable problem, exposing the executive stealing from the company before the transfer completes. Dream stability, perfect. He slept for 43 minutes. Then he sat upright and said the name of a person I had never heard before. I did not need to hear it again. By dawn, the thief had been caught inside a private airport hangar with a suitcase, 3 forged passports, and a plane that was already moving. The recovered assets were worth more than the entire Grand Arcadia. My 1% arrived 3 days later. The same afternoon, the gold letters over the hotel lit up for the first time in 20 years. The crowd returned. This time, nobody laughed. They stood behind velvet barriers while black cars filled the street. A surgeon begged for a night. A singer offered a private concert. A gambler offered his hands. A prince offered a diamond the size of an egg. I turned them all away. Demand had become fire. Now I needed a fireplace. That was when Lily walked through the front doors. She was the only person in the lobby who did not stare at the chandelier or the guards or the line of rich people outside. She stared at me. We had grown up in the same narrow apartment, sharing a wall thin enough to hear each other turn pages at night. She knew how I looked when I was bored, angry, amused, or planning something. She had seen the videos and arrived with one suitcase and the expression of someone entering a crime scene. She asked whether I had joined a cult. I told her I had started something more profitable. She looked at the crowd outside and said I needed help. I looked at the suitcase and said she had already decided to stay. Lily became the front desk, the guest coordinator, and the only employee willing to tell me when I sounded like a villain. She did not know how the room worked at first. She only knew that guests entered desperate and left with eyes that looked too awake. Within a week, she noticed the pattern. She cornered me in the empty ballroom and demanded the truth. I showed her room 404. The blue light did not appear for her. Only I could see it. But she believed after I explained the rules because Lily had always known when I was lying, and I had always respected her too much to lie badly. Her first reaction was wonder. Her second was fear. She said a room like that could save millions of people. I said it could control the people who controlled millions. That answer made her quiet. It also made her stay. Lily wanted the room used for good. I wanted good to become one of the tools I used to build power. Those goals were not opposites yet. I intended to keep it that way. I created a waiting list with one rule. Money could not buy a higher place. That announcement caused chaos. Billionaires who had purchased elections, islands, and entire sports leagues could not understand a door that stayed closed. They sent gifts. I returned them. They sent threats. I displayed those threats on a giant screen in the lobby with the senders' names hidden, then let the public vote on which one sounded most pathetic. One threat won by 3 million votes. The sender apologized the next day. Instead of price, I ranked applicants by projected impact. The system already showed me a rough value above every guest, but I did not reveal that. I called my public ranking the crown list. To move higher, applicants had to prove they could use an answer on a large scale. A hotel owner built shelters after a storm and rose 12 places. A technology founder opened his patents and rose 9. 3 rival billionaires built competing children's hospitals in the same week because each thought the others might pass him. The world called it charity. I called it training. I had turned selfishness into a machine that produced public good, and every turn of the machine pointed back to my hotel. Lily stared at the hospital news and accused me of manipulating everyone. I reminded her that sick children did not care why the beds had been built. She hated that I was right. I enjoyed that she hated it. The crown list spread across every network. People followed it like a sports league. Applicants gave interviews about their biggest problems without realizing they were also showing me exactly how to aim the room. Stock prices moved when someone climbed 3 positions. Crowds cheered when an arrogant billionaire dropped below a schoolteacher who had designed a cheap water filter. But fame creates 2 kinds of enemies. The first kind wants to prove you are fake. The second kind knows you are real. The first came through the front doors wearing a red coat and a smile made for cameras. Her name was Serena. She had built a career by exposing frauds in front of enormous live audiences. Fake healers, fake investors, fake heroes. She could turn one raised eyebrow into a week of headlines. She entered the lobby with 6 cameras behind her and announced that she would spend one night in room 404. Lily moved to stop the crew. I let them keep filming. Serena said she would pay nothing. She would not promise a share. She only wanted the truth. I looked above her head. Largest solvable problem, stopping the collapse of her audience. Solvability, 91%. Projected value, high. Dream stability, low. Interesting. The woman who lived by exposing lies was hiding one from everyone, including herself. Her audience was leaving because she had begun choosing easy targets and pretending they were dangerous. She was terrified of becoming irrelevant. I invited her upstairs. Lily caught my arm as I passed and whispered that Serena would destroy us if the room failed. I told her the room would not fail. People failed, and I had no intention of letting Serena remain the person she was when she entered. At 11:30, I placed Serena alone in the black chair beside the bed. Her cameras remained outside. She demanded a demonstration. I ignored her questions and played a series of clips from her oldest investigations. In those videos, she was fearless. She chased powerful people, took real risks, and laughed when they threatened her. Then I played her newest clips. They were polished, loud, and empty. Her smile vanished. At 11:55, I showed her a graph of her falling audience. At 11:57, I showed her private messages from her own staff discussing who would leave first. At 11:59, I placed a sealed folder on the desk. Inside was evidence I had purchased that morning. A famous relief organization had been stealing donations meant for disaster victims. The story was real, dangerous, and untouched. Serena stared at the first photograph. The blue text shifted. Largest solvable problem. Exposing the relief organization before the evidence disappears. Dream stability, perfect. I took the folder away. Then I turned off the light. Serena slept for 3 hours. When she woke, she knew where the stolen donations had gone, which warehouse held the evidence, which guard would accept a bribe, which computer contained the records, and which public official would try to stop her. She left the hotel without saying a word. For 9 days, nothing happened. Her audience assumed I had failed. My critics celebrated. The crown list dropped in public trust. One network ran a countdown titled The Oracle's First Disaster. On the 10th night, Serena broadcast live from a hidden warehouse while thousands of boxes of stolen relief supplies towered behind her. She exposed the entire operation. Police arrived while the stream was still running. Donations were recovered. Executives were arrested. Her audience became larger than it had ever been. At the end of the broadcast, she looked directly into the camera and said that the Grand Arcadia had not shown her the truth. It had shown her where she had stopped looking. That sentence made the hotel immortal. Serena returned the next morning. She placed a gold coin on the front desk and said it represented half of 1% of the income the investigation would create for her. And then she asked what I wanted from her. I told her I wanted the world watching whenever I opened a door. She smiled. From that day on, Serena became the hotel's loudest critic, strongest defender, and most useful camera. She never called herself my ally. I never asked her to. Labels were for people who needed certainty. I needed reach. By the end of the 3rd month, the wait for room 404 was 6 months long. Celebrities rented apartments across the street just to be near the lobby. Inventors slept in cars outside. Billionaires sent chefs, doctors, and private security teams to hold their place in line even though places could not be held. A royal family arrived in a convoy of 30 vehicles, only to discover that I had given the night to a mechanic trying to prevent a bridge from collapsing. The mechanic woke with a design that used the bridge's own vibration to strengthen it. The royal family left furious. The public loved me for it. That was useful too. Every night created a miracle. Every miracle created wealth. Every small percentage returned to the Grand Arcadia, and I used it to make the hotel impossible to ignore. I built a glass tower around the original structure without touching room 404. I added a rooftop garden shaped like a crown. I installed an elevator that crossed the lobby sideways before rising through the center of the tower. I turned the ruined ballroom into a public arena where the crown list changed in real time across a wall of light. Still, I left the cracked column. I wanted every powerful person who entered to remember what the building had been when they laughed. And then Grant arrived. He did not bring cameras. He did not offer money. He did not look at the crown list. He stood beside the cracked column, studied the angle of the chandelier, and asked Lily how many minutes each successful guest had slept. That was the first interesting question anyone had asked. I watched him from the balcony above the lobby. Grant had made his name solving impossible frauds, disappearances, and staged miracles. He did not perform for audiences. He did not threaten suspects. He simply removed every explanation that was wrong until the truth had nowhere left to hide. He looked up and met my eyes. Most people looked at me with hope, fear, greed, or envy. Grant looked at me like a locked door. Then he smiled. For the first time since I bought the hotel, I felt something sharper than satisfaction. I felt challenged. Grant did not ask whether the room worked. That alone separated him from everyone else. Believers asked how soon they could enter. Skeptics asked how I faked it. Grant asked why the restaurant owner had slept for 6 hours, the scientist for 4, and the chief executive for only 43 minutes. He had measured the exact gap between every guest's arrival and departure by studying public cameras from the street. I came down the staircase slowly. He said the length of sleep did not match the size of the result. That meant the room was not building a solution piece by piece. It was waiting for something, then delivering the answer all at once. I asked what he thought it was waiting for. He looked at the red clock visible through the open doorway of the elevator. He said, "The right question." Then he left. Lily watched the doors close behind him and asked whether I was worried. I told her worry was what happened when fear lacked a plan. I already had 6. Grant's first move came 2 nights later. A violinist reached the top of the crown list after a public campaign gathered millions of votes. She had a disease that would soon take the movement from her hands. People wanted the room to reveal a cure. The blue display told me something else. Largest solvable problem. Repairing the relationship with her estranged daughter before losing the ability to play. Solvability, 99%. Projected value, emotional. Dream stability, high. The disease was not solvable. The relationship was. Grant knew it. He had pushed the violinist's case into public view to see whether the oracle room could distinguish between the biggest problem people saw and the biggest problem it could actually answer. If she woke cured, I was using a hidden treatment. If she woke with nothing, I was a fraud. If she woke with an answer to a different problem, Grant would learn the room's boundary. It was a clever test, so I made it mine. I let Serena broadcast the violinist entering the hotel. I made no promise of a cure. I said only that room 404 answered what could be answered. Before midnight, I placed an old recording of the violinist's daughter beside the bed. I did not play it. I did not need to. The violinist's eyes stayed on the recording for 11 minutes. At dawn, she left with no cure. The crowd outside went silent. Then she walked past every camera, entered a waiting car, and drove directly to the daughter she had not spoken to in 14 years. That evening, they performed one final concert together. The violinist's hands failed during the last song, so her daughter finished it while the mother held the bow. The broadcast became the most watched musical performance in history. Grant had learned the room did not solve the impossible. I had learned something better. A miracle did not need to defeat death to control the world. It only needed to arrive where people hurt most. Public trust in the hotel doubled. Grant's test had made me stronger. That was the pattern between us from the beginning. He would build a cage. I would turn it into a throne. His second move was harder. He arranged for 5 applicants to arrive at the same time. None knew the others were part of a test. One feared losing a company. One feared prison. One feared a marriage ending. One feared an invention failing. The last claimed to fear an approaching hurricane. Only one of them was telling the truth. Grant had fabricated the other 4 crises using actors, false messages, and staged phone calls. He wanted to know whether I could identify a real problem without letting the guests sleep. The 5 stood in the lobby beneath the crown list while Serena's cameras rolled. Grant remained outside, invisible except to me. I invited the inventor upstairs. The crowd assumed I had guessed. Grant knew better. The blue text above the inventor showed high solvability and real projected value. The others showed unstable problems built on weak belief. The room did not care whether a document or phone call was real. It cared whether the person believed it. Grant's actors had been too careful. Somewhere inside, 4 of the applicants still suspected the emergency might be a test. The inventor did not. That night, the dream showed a way to make concrete heal its own cracks using sleeping bacteria sealed in glass beads. Within a month, the invention was being poured into bridges across the country. Grant sent me a note the next morning. It contained one line. "You are not choosing the most deserving person. You are choosing the cleanest problem." I burned the note in the lobby fireplace. He was close, but close was a dangerous place to stand around me. I began using the room on myself once every 30 nights. People called those empty dates selfish. They were right. A weapon that changed the world was useless if its owner could not protect the hand holding it. On my first private night after Grant arrived, I forced every thought from my mind except one. How could I make the Grand Arcadia impossible to capture without turning it into a prison? The dream showed me the hotel as a giant puzzle box. Walls rotated around hidden steel circles. Elevators moved sideways, diagonally, and down into false lobbies. Every corridor could change length using sliding panels. The sprinkler system could release water, foam, harmless dye, or clouds of cold vapor. Glass floors could turn opaque. Doors could vanish into walls. The ballroom stage could descend into a secure chamber. The roof garden could fold open and launch a fleet of camera drones. None of it required magic. It required money, engineering, and the exact order of construction. I had all 3. For 6 weeks, the Grand Arcadia closed during daylight and transformed at night. Crews entered through separate doors and never saw the full design. One built rotating walls, another built moving floors, another installed an elevator that could drop 40 feet in silence, stop 1 inch above the ground, then open into a room filled with soft cushions. Lily called that elevator cruel. I called it memorable. When construction ended, I invited a group of professional thieves to test the hotel. They were the best Serena could find without asking questions that would get her arrested. I gave them one goal: reach room 404. They entered at midnight. The first team ran through a hallway that curved until they returned to the same door 6 times. The second climbed an emergency stairwell and opened the exit onto the ballroom ceiling. The third cut through a wall and stepped into the sideways elevator. The elevator dropped. Their screams lasted 4 seconds. Then the doors opened into the cushion room, where Serena waited with a microphone. The final thief reached the 4th floor by crawling through the ventilation system. He pushed open a grate and fell directly into the lobby fountain. I watched from the balcony as the entire attempt streamed live. By morning, no one in the world believed the Grand Arcadia could be taken by force. Grant watched the stream too. He noticed that I had designed the hotel before anyone had tried to steal it. That told him I had used the room on myself. His third move began the next day. He publicly announced that he had solved the secret of room 404. He did not explain. He simply asked me to let Serena sleep there a second time while he controlled everything she saw and heard before midnight. The request was brilliant. If I refused, the world would assume he was right. If I accepted, he could aim Serena's mind at a question of his choice. He wanted her largest problem to become exposing the room. If the dream revealed the mechanism, my control would end. Serena demanded that I accept. She had become too famous to tolerate anyone believing she protected me. Lily argued that we should deny the test and let the public forget. Grant knew both of them well enough to predict those reactions. He had placed 3 pressures on me at once: reputation, Serena's pride, Lily's fear. I accepted immediately. Grant spent the entire day with Serena in a sealed studio across town. He showed her every successful guest, every unexplained coincidence, every frame of footage from the hotel. He made her repeat one question until her voice became hoarse. How does room 404 work? At 11:30, he brought her to the hotel wearing noise-canceling headphones and dark glasses. He refused to let me speak to her. He searched the room, removed the black desk, covered the red clock, and replaced the bedsheets. I allowed all of it. The blue display above Serena showed exactly what Grant wanted. Largest solvable problem: discovering the operating mechanism of room 404. Solvability: 62%. Dream stability: perfect. Lily went pale when she saw my face. I was smiling. Grant had made one mistake. He believed the largest problem stayed still. At 11:58, every screen in the city lit up with a video of Serena's younger brother being dragged into a van. There was no name attached. No demand, only a timestamp and a live location moving toward the river. Serena tore off the headphones. The video was real enough to fool anyone because it was real. Her brother had agreed to help me stage it after I explained that Serena's career and possibly her life depended on defeating Grant's test. The van was driven by my security team. He was never in danger. Serena did not know that. Her face lost all color. The blue text changed so fast it blurred. Largest solvable problem: finding and rescuing her brother before the van reaches the river. Solvability: 100%. Dream stability: perfect. Grant understood at 11:59 and 50 seconds. He moved toward the bed. The hotel floor rotated beneath him. A glass wall rose from the carpet, separating him from Serena as the lights went out. Midnight arrived. Serena slept. 8 minutes later, she woke screaming in a dress. We drove there together. Her brother stepped out of the van holding a cup of coffee and apologized before she punched him in the chest. Serena punched me too. Then she laughed until she cried. Grant did neither. He stood under a streetlight, watching me while the cameras gathered. I had proven that the room could be aimed by changing the guest's emotional priority. More importantly, I had proven that I could do it faster than Grant could stop me. But I had also revealed my method. The world saw a dramatic rescue. Grant saw the weapon. He knew that I was not merely selecting guests. I was deciding which problem the Oracle solved. From that night on, our game changed. Grant stopped trying to expose the room as fake. He began trying to expose me as dangerous. That was much more difficult because I was dangerous. I simply made danger look useful. The next month became a parade of impossible victories. A famous actor entered with a career destroyed by scandal. The room showed him how to film an entire action movie in one continuous shot inside an active volcano observatory. The film earned $2 billion. My percentage paid for 3 new hotel floors. A surgeon entered after failing the same operation 7 times. The dream showed a method using a patient's heartbeat as a timing signal. The 8th operation succeeded, and hospitals around the world copied it. A chess champion entered after losing to an unbeatable machine. The dream did not show a winning move. It showed how to force the machine to waste time calculating a position that looked impossible, but was actually harmless. The champion won with 1 second left on the clock, then bowed toward the hotel camera. A city planner entered while a wildfire surrounded 3 towns. The room showed where to cut a trench shaped like a spiral so the wind would turn the fire against itself. The sky glowed red all night. By dawn, the town stood untouched inside a black circle. Every success made me richer, but money was becoming the least interesting part. My tiny shares connected me to energy, shipping, construction, medicine, entertainment, food, and communication. I did not own those industries. I owned something better, gratitude at the top of them. When I called, powerful people answered before the first ring ended. When I asked for a plane, 3 arrived. When I needed a satellite image, clouds became optional. When the Grand Arcadia held a dinner, presidents waited outside while a schoolteacher finished dessert. Lily said I was building an empire without admitting it. I told her empires needed borders. I had a waiting list. The crown list became more competitive. One billionaire funded the cleanup of an entire ocean bay to climb 5 places. Another built a solar railway across a desert and climbed 6. A third released a medicine at cost and rose only 2 because I knew he had done it for the ranking. He complained publicly. I dropped him 11 places. The next morning he donated a hospital ship. Serena called the crown list the most effective weaponized popularity contest in human history. She meant it as criticism. I used the quote in an advertisement. Grant continued studying me. He noticed I never let a guest enter in a calm state. Every person saw a clock, a photograph, a live feed, or an object connected to the problem. He noticed the room contained no television unless I placed one there. He noticed I sometimes delayed a guest for hours, then rushed another upstairs with only seconds remaining. He built a theory. The oracle did not read destiny. It read priority. To test it, Grant sent a mathematician whose mind could hold several difficult problems at once. The mathematician had spent years trying to prove an equation that could change digital security. Grant also arranged 3 personal crises on the same night: a missing pet, a threatened job, and a family emergency. He wanted to see which one the room chose. I saw the trap immediately. The display above the mathematician flickered between 4 categories. Dream stability was nearly 0. So I did not try to calm the mind. I overloaded it further. I brought the mathematician into the ballroom, where 400 people waited. Each person held a phone containing encrypted medical records trapped by a worldwide ransomware attack. Hospitals were canceling surgeries. Ambulances were being redirected. The same equation the mathematician had failed to prove could break the encryption. I asked every person in the ballroom to turn on a small white light. 400 lights appeared. Then Serena's broadcast showed 400 more in another city. Then 4,000, then 40,000. Patients, doctors, families, strangers. Each light represented someone waiting for the equation. The mathematician looked at the sea of lights and forgot the missing pet, the job, and the staged family emergency. The blue display steadied. Largest solvable problem. Completing the equation before the ransomware deadline. Dream stability. Perfect. The dream solved it. By sunrise, the hospitals had their records back. Grant had created 4 competing problems. I had created one that swallowed them all. Afterward, he met me on the roof garden. The city spread beneath us like a circuit board. He said I had discovered a way to make people sincerely care about whatever I placed in front of them. I corrected him. I had discovered that most people already wanted to care. They only needed a problem large enough to silence themselves. Grant asked whether I ever considered what would happen when I aimed the room at the wrong thing. I said wrong was a word used by people who did not control the outcome. He looked almost disappointed. That reaction bothered me more than anger would have. Grant was not trying to beat me because he hated miracles. He was trying to determine whether I had placed myself above everyone who received them. The answer was obvious. Of course I had. Someone had to decide who entered the room. It might as well be the person intelligent enough to understand the decision. That night, I found Lily sitting alone beside the cracked column. She had watched the roof conversation through a security feed. She asked whether there was anyone I would not manipulate. I told her I had never manipulated her. She stared at me until I admitted that was not true. Then she asked whether there was anyone I would not sacrifice. I did not answer immediately. For the first time, the silence between us felt like a locked door. Before I could open it, every light in the lobby turned gold. A private aircraft the size of a passenger jet had landed on the avenue outside. The street shook as its stairs lowered. A line of armored cars rolled from the cargo hold. Security teams poured into the road. Behind them came assistants carrying black cases, doctors carrying silver cases, and one man carrying nothing at all. His name was Marcus. He owned the largest private technology network in the world, half the satellites above it, and enough media companies to make his opinions look like weather. He had never joined the Crown list. He had never donated to climate. He had never requested a reservation. He simply arrived. The lobby emptied as his security team formed two lines. Serena's cameras moved closer. Grant remained on the roof, watching through the glass. Marcus stopped in front of me and placed a small black card on the desk. The card displayed a number with more zeros than the Grand Arcadia had windows. He said he wanted room 404 that night. I looked at the Crown list, where a water engineer from a drought-stricken region held the top position. Then I pushed the black card back across the desk. Marcus did not look angry. People like him rarely showed anger before deciding whether the object in front of them should be purchased or destroyed. He asked whether I understood how much money was on the card. I told him I understood exactly how little it could buy. The water engineer entered room 404 at midnight. Marcus remained in the lobby until dawn. The dream revealed a way to pull drinking water from desert air using towers made from cheap woven glass. Within weeks, villages that had waited years for pipelines had fountains running in their streets. The Crown List audience celebrated. Marcus watched the first fountain turn on from the cracked column beneath the chandelier. Then he looked at me and smiled. He said the hotel was impressive. He also said everything impressive eventually became part of his collection. I told him the Grand Arcadia was not for sale. He glanced toward room 404. Then he said he had not been talking about the hotel. That was the moment the real war began. Marcus attacked the waiting list first. He offered every person in the top 100 enough money to disappear forever. 27 accepted. 8 tried to sell him their nights. One arrived with a suitcase full of cash and announced that Marcus would be sleeping in his place. I let the man finish. Then I invited the next applicant upstairs. Room 404 did not recognize ownership purchased from someone else. The owner's invitation had to match the sleeper. A reservation was not a ticket. It was my decision. Marcus learned that money could move people around the board, but it could not move the final piece. So he changed the board. Within a month, he announced the opening of a rival hotel called the Dream Palace. It had 100 white rooms, each containing a silver bed surrounded by scanners. Marcus claimed his machines could read a guest's memories, fears, habits, medical history, financial data, and hidden desires. An artificial intelligence would then calculate the best solution to any problem. 100 answers every night. His advertisements asked a simple question. Why wait 6 months for one man's permission? The Dream Palace opened with fireworks visible from my roof. Celebrities arrived wearing silver. Investors cheered as the first 100 guests entered their rooms. By dawn, Marcus had produced 100 success stories. A trader avoided a bad investment. A singer chose a better tour date. A factory changed one machine and increased production. A lonely man found a dating profile that matched his habits. The results were real. They were also small. Marcus had built an excellent machine for solving problems people could already describe. It gathered more information than any human mind could hold and found patterns faster than any team. But it could not recognize the one problem hidden beneath all the others. It could not know which truth a person was avoiding. Most importantly, it could not dream beyond the data it possessed. I did not criticize the Dream Palace. I praised it. Serena nearly dropped her microphone when I called Marcus's invention impressive. The market surged. His hotel sold out for a year. Commentators declared the Oracle era finished. Lily asked why I was helping him. I told her a small lie was difficult to destroy because people defended it carefully. A large lie stood high enough for everyone to watch it fall. I used my next private night in room 404. For 3 hours before sleep, I watched every Dream Palace success. I studied the machines, the guests, the advertisements, and Marcus's smile. Then I reduced my mind to one question. How could I defeat Marcus without making him look like a victim? The dream showed me an underwater tunnel. It ran beneath a bay and carried 500,000 people every day. A hairline crack had formed inside a wall thicker than a house. Salt water entered 1 drop at a time. Sensors had missed it because the crack opened only when 2 tides pulled in opposite directions. The dream showed me the exact date the crack would widen. It also showed me Marcus standing in a stadium with 100 silver beds. I woke laughing. 2 weeks later, I challenged the Dream Palace to a public competition. Marcus accepted before Serena finished reading my statement. He rented the largest stadium in the city and placed 100 of his silver rooms across the field. Screens rose over the seats. 50,000 people attended. Hundreds of millions watched from home. Marcus selected 100 guests with serious problems, business failures, medical puzzles, engineering questions, missing evidence. He wanted volume to crush mystery. I brought one guest. She was an engineer responsible for the underwater tunnel. Nobody knew the tunnel had a problem, including her. That detail mattered. Marcus laughed when I led her to a single black bed placed at the center of the field. He believed I had chosen an ordinary guest to hide from comparison. At 11:45, the stadium screens displayed live pressure readings from the tunnel. Everything looked normal. At 11:50, I asked the engineer to explain the structure. At 11:55, I showed a magnified image of the hidden crack. At 11:58, water began spraying through it. The tunnel alarms activated. Cars stopped beneath the bay. Emergency crews rushed toward both entrances. The crack widened from a thread to a black line. The engineer stared at the screen as water struck the camera. Largest solvable problem, preventing the underwater tunnel from collapsing before evacuation completes. Solvability, 78%. Dream stability, perfect. At midnight, 100 guests entered Marcus's machines. My engineer entered room 404's temporary bed chamber, which I had built beneath a black canopy connected to the hotel through a sealed system. The oracle room itself could not move, but the bed was never the source of its power. I had not moved the room. I had moved the stadium around a live visual link and a sleep chamber built over the exact floor panel transported from 404 during renovation. It was the most ridiculous thing I had attempted so far. It worked because the system recognized the chamber as an extension of the room for one night after I rebuilt every surrounding wall in the same shape. Marcus's first guest woke after 12 minutes with a plan to improve a bakery. His second woke with a better exercise routine. His third identified a dishonest manager. The stadium applauded each answer, but their eyes kept returning to the tunnel. Water now flooded one lane. At 12:31, the engineer woke. She ran to the control station and gave 6 orders. Reverse every ventilation fan. Close the east gates but leave the west gates open. Drain liquid nitrogen from refrigerated cargo trucks waiting above the tunnel. Pump it into the emergency fire line. Vibrate the wall at a frequency matching the second tide. Then open the maintenance locks for exactly 9 seconds. The plan sounded insane. That was why it was beautiful. The fans pushed freezing vapor through the tunnel. Liquid nitrogen raced through the fire system and froze the salt water inside the crack. The controlled vibration widened the gap for 1 instant, allowing the ice to fill it completely. When the locks opened, pressure from the bay compressed the frozen plug instead of breaking the wall. The leak stopped. The tunnel remained standing. 50,000 people rose at once. Marcus still had 97 guests asleep. Nobody cared. By sunrise, his machines had produced 100 reasonable answers. Room 404 had saved 500,000 lives with one impossible one. I had not accused Marcus of fraud. I had allowed him to prove the limit of his own invention in front of the world. The Dream Palace did not close. It remained useful. That made my victory worse for him. Everyone could see that his 100 rooms were tools. Mine was an oracle. Marcus lost more influence in one night than most people gained in a lifetime. He responded by surrounding the Grand Arcadia. He purchased every building on the block. He bought the parking structures, the restaurants, the empty theater, and the towers across the street. He closed roads for construction. He covered the skyline with silver advertisements for the Dream Palace. From my rooftop garden, I could no longer see the sunrise without looking through his name. Lily called it childish. I called it expensive. Then I built upward. The energy scientist's cells powered vertical construction cranes that worked without cables. The concrete inventor's material allowed floors to cure in hours. The shipping chief sent airships designed to carry cargo over block streets. Within 12 days, a black tower rose above every silver sign Marcus owned. At the top, I built a landing platform shaped like an open eye. Guests began arriving by helicopter, airship, and once by a balloon carried across the ocean by high-altitude winds. The closed roads became irrelevant. The buildings Marcus had purchased became excellent places for crowds to stand and photograph my tower. He had paid to improve my view. Grant visited while the final platform was still being installed. He said Marcus would not stop at business. I said neither would I. Grant had studied the private night I used before the tunnel challenge. He knew I had entered room 404 2 weeks before the crack widened. He knew the timing was too perfect. His conclusion was correct. I had used the room to choose the battlefield. He asked how many future disasters I already knew about. I told him fewer than he feared and more than he would enjoy. That answer was mostly a bluff. The oracle did not show me the future whenever I wanted. It solved the problem dominating my mind. The tunnel appeared because it was part of the answer to defeating Marcus. I could not ask for a list of disasters unless discovering that list became my largest sincere problem. Grant suspected this limitation, but he could not prove it. So he tried something new. He joined the Crown list. The announcement caused more attention than any billionaire application. The man trying to expose me was now asking for my miracle. Serena broadcast his position at number 812. Grant did not complain. He began climbing. He solved a series of missing person cases without payment. He exposed a dangerous bridge before it failed. He located stolen medical supplies. Each act pushed him higher because the public believed he was proving he could use an answer responsibly. Within a month, he reached the top 50. I could have frozen his rank. I did the opposite. I moved him to number 10. Lily asked whether that was pride. I said it was bait. Grant wanted to sleep in room 404 with one problem filling his mind: how to stop me. The room might tell him. That made granting his reservation dangerous. Denying it forever would prove I feared the answer. So I placed him close enough to see the door and far enough to keep watching him. Grant understood. Our game now had a clock. Marcus's next attack targeted Serena. A video appeared showing her accepting money from the relief organization she had exposed. Another showed her planning the warehouse broadcast with actors. A third showed her admitting that every miracle at the Grand Arcadia was staged. The videos were perfect. Her face, her voice, her smallest habits. Even Lily doubted the first one for 3 seconds. Serena's audience collapsed in a day. Networks suspended her. Former allies called her a fraud. Crowds gathered outside the hotel, this time to throw red paint instead of flowers. Serena arrived through the roof platform with her hands shaking. She demanded room 404. That night belonged to a child whose doctors could not identify a rare poison. Lily wanted to protect the reservation. Serena wanted the room to expose the false videos. Grant watched from across the lobby, knowing the choice would reveal exactly how I valued life, loyalty, and power. Marcus had created a perfect moral trap. I gave the room to the child. Lily looked relieved. Grant looked surprised. Serena looked betrayed. Then I handed Serena a camera and told her to follow me. I did not need the oracle to defeat a copy. I needed the original. Every false video had been built from Serena's old broadcasts. The creator had copied her face perfectly, but had made one mistake. Serena had broken a tooth during the warehouse investigation and repaired it the next morning. In 3 of the videos, the reflection on that tooth matched broadcasts from before the repair. In 2 others, it matched after. The same supposed meeting contained both versions. I had Serena smile into a microscopic camera. Then I displayed the evidence across the Crown List wall. The fake collapsed in minutes, but I went further. The false videos contained invisible timing marks left by the Dream Palace's media network. I traced them through the energy cells powering Marcus's own broadcast towers. At midnight, while the child in room 404 dreamed of the exact plant causing the poison, Serena streamed the route from the fake video studio to a private office inside Marcus's tallest building. She did not accuse him directly. She opened the office door. Inside, technicians were still rendering another lie. Serena's audience returned before sunrise. The child survived. Marcus lost 3 media companies. Grant found me alone in the ballroom afterward. He said I had chosen both sides of the moral trap. I said only people with limited imagination accepted forced choices. He asked what I would do when 2 problems truly could not both be solved. I told him I would make sure that night never arrived. For once, Grant laughed. Not because the answer was funny, because he knew arrogance had finally spoken louder than calculation. Marcus abandoned subtlety. At dawn 3 days later, every power line feeding the Grand Arcadia went dead. Water stopped, communication signals vanished, the surrounding streets filled with black trucks. Thousands of hired protesters blocked the roof platform with signal balloons. Private aircraft circled above the city, creating a moving wall around the tower. A message appeared on every silver screen outside. One night in room 404, and the siege ends. Lily asked whether we should call the authorities. Serena asked whether we should broadcast. Grant asked whether I had expected this. I walked to the cracked column and placed my hand on the marble. The Grand Arcadia woke up. Energy cells hidden under every floor activated. Water condensed from the air inside the glass walls. Communication lasers opened between the rooftop eye and satellites owned by grateful former guests. The lobby chandelier became an antenna. The black tower disconnected from the city and continued operating like a country 1 block wide. Then the hotel began to move. The entrance rotated away from the block street and opened on the opposite side of the building. A bridge unfolded over Marcus's construction zone. Elevators rose through the roof inside transparent tubes. Camera drones poured from the garden in the shape of a giant crown. Serena's broadcast returned on every device in the city. I stood on the roof beneath the drones and welcomed the world to the first fully independent hotel on Earth. The hired protesters looked up. Someone cheered. Then another. Within an hour, Marcus's siege had become a festival. Food arrived by airship from the restaurant chain created by my first guest. Musicians performed on the unfolded bridge. Engineers projected games onto Marcus's silver screens. The black trucks were trapped inside a dancing crowd. Marcus had tried to isolate me. I turned isolation into sovereignty. That night, the scheduled guest entered room 404 without delay. Marcus's message vanished from the screens before sunrise. But I knew the war had not ended. A man who believes everything can be bought becomes most dangerous when he discovers one thing cannot. He stops asking what it costs. He begins asking what it would take to break. After the siege, the Grand Arcadia stopped being treated like a hotel. It became neutral ground. Rival nations sent their leaders through the same lobby. Competing companies shared elevators because neither wanted to be seen causing trouble under my roof. Celebrities lowered their voices near the cracked column. Billionaires who owned private armies checked their weapons at the door without being asked twice. The 6-month waiting list stretched to 8. I cut it back to 6 by removing anyone whose problem was merely expensive. That decision terrified the rich more than any price increase could have. A broken company could recover. A lost fortune could return. But being told that your crisis was too small for room 404 was a wound money could not cover. They began competing to create problems worthy of my attention. One shipping magnate built floating farms across a starving coastline. A software founder gave free communication devices to every rescue team in the country. 2 entertainment giants raced to restore a forest because Serena joked that trees ranked higher than both of them. I did not command any of it. I only moved names on a wall. Grant called that the purest form of control he had ever seen. He said people obeyed me while telling themselves they were competing. I thanked him. He said it was not praise. I thanked him again. The miracles became stranger as the applicants became stronger. A pilot slept in room 404 and dreamed how to land a passenger plane on a moving train after both engines failed. 3 weeks later, an aircraft carrying 400 people lost power over the mountains. The pilot guided it onto a freight train racing through a valley, matched its speed, lowered the landing gear around 2 cargo cars, and rode the train for 6 miles before stopping. A marine engineer dreamed how to lift a sunken city block from the ocean, using millions of empty glass bottles locked inside nets. The streets rose from the sea at dawn, dripping water while crowds watched from boats. A chef entered because every person who tasted his newest dish temporarily lost the ability to speak. He thought it was a failure. The room showed him how to turn the effect into a harmless 30-second silence caused by a cold mineral reaction. He opened a restaurant where world leaders paid to eat 1 bite and experience the only quiet moment in their schedules. My percentage from that single dish purchased a mountain. I built nothing on it. I simply enjoyed knowing I could. Each success taught me more about the Oracle's behavior. The room preferred action over explanation. It did not give guests lectures. It gave sequences, images, timing, and certainty. The more disciplined the mind, the cleaner the dream. The more emotional the problem, the more symbolic the answer became. So I created the Midnight Trial. Every candidate spent 1 hour in the ballroom before selection. I placed them under pressure, challenged their motives, showed them consequences, and watched the blue display change. Applicants thought I was judging character. I was tuning instruments. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room broke under a single question. Sometimes an ordinary applicant became perfectly focused when everyone else panicked. I learned to trigger courage with shame, urgency with silence, and obsession with one well-timed image. Grant attended every trial he could. He took notes without writing anything down. His position on the Crown list rose to number 3. Only a disaster response doctor and an orbital engineer stood above him. The public demanded that I give Grant a date. Serena ran polls. Lily argued that delaying him made me look afraid. I was afraid, not of Grant, of the room answering him correctly. Fear is useful when admitted privately. It sharpens the edge of preparation. I selected a date exactly 180 nights away and placed Grant's name beside it. 6 months. The same weight I had forced on Billionaires. Grant looked at the date for a long time. Then he asked whether I planned to spend 6 months changing what his biggest problem would be. I told him I had already started. His smile disappeared. That was one of my favorite victories. Marcus changed tactics again. Instead of attacking me from outside, he tried to enter through someone else's desire. A celebrated humanitarian climbed to the top of the Crown list after organizing the largest food distribution effort ever attempted. She arrived with no security, no demands, and tears in her eyes. The public adored her. Lily admired her. Serena had filmed her feeding families with her own hands. The blue display above her told a different story. Largest solvable problem. Completing the hidden task Marcus assigned without losing public trust. Solvability, 84%. Projected value, destructive. Dream stability, high. Marcus had finally found a person who sincerely believed stealing the Oracle Room was a moral act. He had convinced her that I was hoarding salvation and that freeing the room would save the world. Her charity work was real. Her compassion was real. So was her plan to poison me before dawn and open the hotel to Marcus's forces. I invited her upstairs. Lily saw my expression and knew something was wrong. I told her to trust me. That sentence had become harder for her to hear. At 11:40, I showed the humanitarian live images from the food network she had built. At 11:50, I revealed that Marcus had secretly purchased the farms supplying it. At 11:55, I showed trucks being turned away from distribution centers under his orders. At 11:58, I played a recording of Marcus's staff discussing how the hunger crisis would force her to obey after the hotel was captured. The woman's hands began to shake. Her hidden task became smaller. The starving families became larger. Largest solvable problem, keeping the food network operating after Marcus cuts the supply chain. Dream stability? Perfect. She slept. The dream showed her how to replace the entire network in 48 hours using rooftop gardens, abandoned rail lines, and the restaurant chain created by my first guest. She woke, emptied the poison from her sleeve into the sink, and told Serena everything. Marcus lost his food companies by the end of the week. I gained another loyal industry without purchasing a single share. Grant was waiting outside room 404 when I emerged. He said I had turned an assassin into an ally by changing the size of her conscience. I said conscience was only attention wearing a noble name. He asked whether I believed everyone could be rewritten. I said everyone except me. Grant looked past me toward Lily. That was the first time I realized he had found the one question I did not want asked. Lily requested a night in room 404 the next morning. She had never asked before. She stood at the front desk after the lobby emptied and said she wanted the same chance I gave strangers. I asked what problem she wanted solved. She said that was the point. The room would decide. I invited her far enough for the blue text to appear. Largest solvable problem, determining whether Adrian can still be stopped without abandoning him. Solvability, 73%. Projected value, extreme. Dream stability, high. For several seconds, I could hear only the chandelier turning above us. Then I withdrew the invitation. The blue text vanished. Lily did not shout. That would have been easier. She simply asked whether the room belonged to me or whether I belonged to my fear of it. I told her she was too emotionally involved to receive a stable answer. We both knew that was a lie. She packed her suitcase that night. She did not leave, but she placed it beside her bed where I would see it. Grant had not forced that fracture. He had only pointed at it. Marcus saw it too. 3 days later, he sent a message directly to Lily. He offered her control of the Dream Palace's charity division, unlimited rooms for ordinary people, and complete freedom from me. She deleted it. The next message included proof that Marcus knew the hotel's service tunnels, roof schedules, and staff rotations. She showed it to me. I changed nothing. Lily thought that meant I dismissed the threat. In reality, I had been waiting for Marcus to believe the tunnels mattered. I ordered the old service route beneath the hotel reopened. I removed 2 sensors, left 1 camera visibly broken, and scheduled a valuable guest to arrive through that route. Serena accused me of setting a trap. I said traps were merely invitations with honest consequences. Grant asked who the bait was. I looked toward Lily. He stepped between us. For 1 sharp second, the lobby became completely silent. Grant said that using Lily without her consent would prove every fear he had about me. I told him I had no intention of using her without consent. Then Lily lifted her suitcase, set it behind the desk, and said she would be the bait. That surprised both of us. She had stayed because she wanted to save me from becoming the person Grant saw. Now she intended to test whether there was anything left to save. The plan was simple on the surface. Lily would travel through the service tunnel with a false key to room 404. Marcus's team would intercept her. The hotel would seal both ends, and Serena would broadcast their capture. Marcus did not send a team. He came himself. At 10:20 that night, every false sensor activated at once. The tunnel walls exploded inward, not from explosives, but from construction machines hidden for weeks inside the surrounding buildings. Marcus entered through 6 openings with hundreds of armored operatives. At the same moment, his aircraft covered the roof, his signal network blinded our satellites, and a pulse weapon shut down the energy cells beneath the hotel. He had studied my independent systems after the siege. He had built a key for the kingdom. The Grand Arcadia went dark. Moving walls stopped halfway through rotation. Elevators froze. Drones fell from the roof garden like dead birds. The giant crown list vanished. Lily disappeared from the tunnel feed. For the first time since I bought the hotel, someone else controlled the pace. Marcus's voice came through the emergency speakers. He said Lily was alive. He said his forces had surrounded room 404. He said I had until midnight to invite him inside. It was 10:27. Grant stood beside me in the dark lobby. Serena held a camera with no signal. Hundreds of guests and staff waited in silence across the tower. I looked at the cracked column, the frozen chandelier, and the empty space where Lily had stood. Then I smiled. Marcus had finally done something worthy of the room. He had created the largest solvable problem in my life. Unfortunately for him, I had already spent 6 months solving it. I snapped my fingers. The chandelier fell. It struck the cracked column and shattered the marble shell. Inside was a second power core that no blueprint contained. The lobby erupted in blue light. Every wall in the Grand Arcadia began moving at once. Marcus thought he had entered my hotel. He had entered the answer to a dream. The hidden core did not power the hotel's modern systems. It powered the old ones. Steel cables tightened inside the walls. Counterweights dropped through shafts. Hydraulic locks slammed into place. The Grand Arcadia transformed from a glass tower into a mechanical beast driven by gravity, pressure, and gears too simple for Marcus's pulse weapon to kill. Emergency lamps burned blue along the floor. Every operative inside the service tunnels found the ground tilting beneath them. The tunnels rotated 30 degrees and became slides. Armored teams crashed into padded holding rooms while steel gates closed behind them. Magnetic plates pulled weapons from their hands and pinned those weapons to the ceiling. On the 5th floor, a squad cut through a wall and entered what looked like room 404. The door vanished behind them. The room became an elevator. It carried them sideways through the building and opened onto the stage of the ballroom, where hundreds of trapped guests applauded because they thought it was part of the defense show. Serena found one working camera and began recording. Grant studied the blue emergency map projected across the broken column. Marcus's forces appeared as moving red points. Lily appeared nowhere. I watched the pattern. Most commanders looked at numbers and saw positions. I saw intention. 2 teams attacked the power core. 3 rushed the roof. 4 moved toward false stairwells. Those were distractions. The real line was a narrow gap where no red points appeared at all. Marcus was moving inside the walls. He had obtained the original renovation records from one of the contractors. He knew about a maintenance passage too narrow for armor and too old for electronic sensors. He also knew it led to the 4th floor. I had left that passage in the plans for him to find. Grant saw my expression and asked whether Marcus was following the route I wanted. I said almost. The dangerous word was almost. At 10:41, a red light flashed inside the elevator shaft. Marcus had changed direction. He was not going directly to room 404. He was taking Lily to the roof. That was not in my dream. The Oracle had shown me how to make the hotel impossible to capture. It had not shown every decision Marcus would make, because people were not falling stones. They changed when they sensed a trap. For the first time that night, my plan had to become faster than the future. I ordered the rooftop garden folded shut. Nothing happened. Marcus had physically severed the hydraulic line. I sent the sideways elevator upward. His team blocked the shaft with a steel charge. I opened the drone chamber. The drones were still dead. Grant said Marcus wanted an aircraft extraction. If he reached the roof, he could take Lily away and force me to bargain from outside the hotel. I already knew that. What I needed was the one path Marcus believed I would never use. I looked at Serena. Her camera was recording locally, but the signal remained blocked. I told her to aim it at me. Then I opened every exterior wall on the 4th floor. Wind exploded through the hotel. Furniture slid. Glass panels folded outward. The black tower became a hollow frame for 3 seconds, exposing the moving gears inside it to the city. Marcus's aircraft adjusted position to avoid the debris. That was the opening. I released the emergency balloons hidden beneath the roof platform. Hundreds of black spheres rose into the air, not to carry people, but to create a moving minefield of steel cables. The circling aircraft scattered. One clipped a cable and spun away, trailing smoke before landing on an empty avenue. Marcus reached the roof with Lily at 10:46. No aircraft could reach him, so he dragged her back toward the service lift, exactly where I wanted him. I entered the sideways elevator with Grant and Serena. It launched upward, stopped beneath the roof, then turned 90 degrees and shot across the tower. We emerged from a wall behind Marcus's team. The roof became chaos. Wind tore across the open garden. Black balloons filled the sky. Security lights swept over armored operatives trapped between folding sections of steel grass. Serena ran left with the camera. Grant moved right, drawing 2 guards away. I walked straight toward Marcus. He held Lily by one arm and a small blade against the side of her neck. He looked less like a billionaire now. The perfect suit was torn. Dust covered his face. His calm had become something hard and bright. He said the hotel was impressive. I told him he had said that before. He said this time he understood the compliment. Then he demanded the invitation. I looked at Lily. She did not ask me to save her. That made it easier to think and harder to breathe. I invited Marcus to room 404. Grant turned sharply. Serena nearly lowered the camera. Marcus smiled. The blue text appeared above him for the first time. Largest solvable problem. Gaining permanent control of the Oracle room before Adrian reverses the siege. Solvability, 41%. Projected value. Civilization changing. Dream stability. High. If Marcus slept with that problem, the room might show him a real path to victory. I had just placed the world's most dangerous answer one staircase away from the man I wanted to destroy. That was not surrender. It was the final move. Room 404 opened as we approached. Marcus forced Lily into the corridor ahead of him. His remaining operatives surrounded us. The hotel defenses stopped at my command. At 11:07, Marcus entered the room. He kept Lily outside as insurance. He ordered one guard to watch me and another to hold her. Then he swallowed a fast-acting sleep tablet and lay on the bed. He had prepared carefully. He expected me to create noise, pain, or panic to keep him awake. His guards placed soundproof panels around the bed. A mask covered his eyes. The tablet slowed his breathing. The blue text remained stable. Largest solvable problem. Gaining permanent control of the Oracle room. I had 53 minutes. Marcus believed the battle was over because he had reached the bed. He did not understand that room 404 was never most dangerous after a person fell asleep. It was most dangerous 1 second before. I told Serena to connect her camera to the red emergency port beside the door. The signal blocker had disabled wireless networks, but the hotel's oldest communication line ran through copper buried beneath the street. Marcus had ignored it because no modern system used it. Serena's broadcast returned in low resolution, flickering and gray. That made it look even more real. Millions of viewers saw Marcus in room 404. They saw Lily held outside. They saw his armed teams inside the hotel. The world did not need commentary, it needed evidence. Then I began releasing everything I had collected, the false videos created against Serena, the purchase of the Food Network, the orders sent to the humanitarian, the private payments to the siege teams, the plans for the pulse weapon, recordings from Dream Palace engineers admitting that Marcus had hidden failures and injured guests, messages from executives he had threatened, partners he had betrayed, and security leaders he planned to discard after capturing the room. I did not rely on documents or laws to defeat him. I relied on people. Every person Marcus had treated as replaceable appeared on Serena's broadcast and told the truth at the same time. His empire did not crack slowly. It shattered in public. Stock markets froze trading in his companies. Employees locked him out of his own networks. Aircraft crews landed and surrendered. The operatives inside the hotel watched their commanders abandon the mission. Crowds gathered outside Dream Palace and tore down the silver banners. Marcus could not see the broadcast behind his mask, but he could hear his guards whispering. At 11:42, one guard lowered his weapon. At 11:46, another walked away. At 11:49, Lily stepped free. Marcus's breathing changed. The blue text flickered. Largest solvable problem, escaping the collapse of his empire without spending the rest of his life hunted by former allies. Solvability, 38%. Dream stability, medium. Not enough. His desire for the room still fought to return. I entered and removed the soundproof panels. Marcus opened his eyes for one instant. The sleep drug pulled them shut again. I placed a screen above the bed showing his tallest headquarters going dark floor by floor. I played the voices of his closest partners announcing they would testify against him. I showed his private aircraft changing their identification codes. I showed the Dream Palace sign being lowered. Then I leaned close enough for him to hear me breathe. I told him the Oracle Room was no longer his largest problem. I was. At 11:59, the display changed. Largest solvable problem, surviving Adrian's total destruction of his power. Solvability, 69%. Dream stability, perfect. Midnight arrived. Marcus slept. The room showed him the only path left. He woke at 12:19 with the expression of a man who had seen every future except the one he wanted. The answer was brutal because it was correct. He had to release Lily publicly, order every remaining operative to surrender, expose the hidden crimes of his own security network, return the companies he had taken through threats, and admit that the Grand Arcadia had defeated him. If he did those things immediately, enough former allies would prefer his silence to his destruction. He would keep his life and a fragment of his fortune. If he refused, the people he had betrayed would tear him apart before morning. Marcus tried to stand. The dream's certainty stopped him more effectively than chains. He had spent his life believing information was power. Now he possessed perfect information, and it commanded him to kneel. He followed the answer. At 12:30, Serena filmed him ordering the siege to end. At 12:36, he gave the locations of every hidden command center. At 12:49, he exposed the people responsible for the false media attacks. At 1:03, he looked into the camera and admitted that he had tried to take room 404 because it was the only thing in the world he could not buy. Then he said I had beaten him. The sentence traveled farther than any miracle. Outside, the black trucks opened. Operatives walked out with empty hands. Aircraft left the sky. The Grand Arcadia's modern power returned as Marcus's network released its hold. The crown list wall lit up again. His name appeared at the bottom. Serena asked whether I had done that. I said the wall had excellent judgment. Lily did not laugh. She waited until the hotel was secure, then slapped me so hard the lobby became silent. I accepted it. She asked whether I had known Marcus would take her to the roof. I said no. She asked whether the dream had guaranteed her safety. I said it had shown a path with an 88% chance of success. Her eyes changed. Lily had thought I possessed certainty. Hearing that I had risked her on probability hurt more than any lie. I told her the plan would have failed without her courage. She said that did not make it kinder. I told her kindness had not saved the hotel. She said neither had I, not alone. Then she walked away. Grant had heard every word. He said the Oracle Room had not made me a god. It had made me a gambler who could see more cards than everyone else. I told him seeing more cards was the closest thing to godhood the world had ever respected. Grant looked toward Marcus being led from the lobby, alive but emptied of power. He said my most frightening act was not defeating an enemy. It was making the enemy believe surrender had been his own best idea. I thanked him a third time. This time he did not correct me. By sunrise, the siege was over. Marcus's empire had broken into pieces. The Dream Palace remained standing, but its silver rooms were dark. The Grand Arcadia had survived its first war. I should have enjoyed the victory longer. At 7:14, every screen in the lobby changed to the same image. A black stone moved across a field of stars. The orbital engineer at the top of the crown list appeared on Serena's emergency feed. Her face was gray. Behind her, observatory workers ran between glowing maps. The object had been hidden behind the sun's glare. It was an iron asteroid wider than the central district of the city. Its path had just shifted after striking a smaller rock. It would cross the moon's orbit in 10 days. Then it would hit the Atlantic. The impact would erase coastlines and throw enough dust into the sky to darken the planet. Every powerful person in the lobby forgot Marcus. Phones rang. Aircraft changed direction. Markets stopped. The crown list filled with emergency requests from governments, scientists, military leaders, and people offering fortunes for one night. The blue display appeared above the orbital engineer on the screen, even though she stood thousands of miles away. She had already accepted my standing invitation as the top candidate. Largest solvable problem: changing the asteroid's path with existing technology before impact. Solvability: 54%. Projected value: human civilization. Dream stability: low. Lily returned to the lobby. Serena lowered her camera. Grant stared at the date of his reservation, still 161 nights away. Marcus had tried to take my hotel. Now the world needed it, and for the first time, room 404 was not deciding who would become rich, famous, free, or powerful. It was deciding whether there would still be a world left to wait 6 months for one night. Panic is usually loud. Real panic becomes quiet first. The Grand Arcadia lobby filled with hundreds of powerful people. Yet for several seconds no one spoke. They watched the black asteroid move across the screens. It looked slow because space was enormous. The numbers beside it said otherwise. It traveled faster than any bullet. 10 days sounded like time until the orbital engineer explained what had to happen before then. A solution needed to be found. The solution needed to be understood. Machines had to be built, launched, aimed, and activated millions of miles away. Every hour lost on fear would become thousands of miles the asteroid moved closer. Then the quiet broke. Government representatives demanded control of room 404. Military leaders offered to secure the hotel. Billionaires offered rockets, satellites, private cities, and numbers so large they no longer sounded like money. Religious leaders asked to pray inside the room. A famous actor demanded to sleep there because he had played an astronaut in 3 films. I raised one hand. The lobby silenced again. I said the orbital engineer would receive the night. A general objected that no single civilian should decide the fate of the planet. I looked around at the people who had arrived to take my decision away. Then I said the planet had already given that authority to the man who owned the bed. Nobody liked the sentence. Nobody could change it. That was power in its cleanest form. The orbital engineer flew toward the hotel in the fastest aircraft available. She would arrive 3 hours before midnight. Until then, I needed to turn a low stability problem into a perfect one. Grant joined me in the control room without invitation. He had studied the engineer's public record. Years earlier, she had noticed a faint distortion near the sun and dismissed it as damaged data. It was the asteroid. She did not merely fear impact. She believed the disaster was her fault. That guilt divided her mind. If she entered room 404 while thinking about blame, the dream might show her how to confess, how to protect her family, or how to make peace before the end. All correct answers, all useless to the planet. Grant said fear of death would make the problem unstable too. I could not simply show her burning cities and expect precision. Too much pressure would turn survival into panic. I asked for his solution. He said the engineer needed to believe 3 things at once. The asteroid could be moved. Only she could find the method. And the world was already prepared to act when she woke. Grant understood minds almost as well as I did. That was irritating. It was also useful. I turned the crown list into a command board. Every applicant received a public task based on their resources. Rocket companies had to reveal launch capacity, satellite owners had to unlock control channels, energy companies had to deliver every available high-density cell, shipping fleets had to clear ocean corridors, factories had to stop normal production and wait for designs. Research centers had to connect their computers into one network. Anyone who refused lost their reservation permanently. Anyone who delayed dropped below the bottom of the list. The effect was immediate. The same billionaires who once competed for charity now competed to save the world faster than their rivals. Rockets rolled from hangars, cargo aircraft filled the sky, engineers opened secure laboratories, private satellites changed orientation and began mapping the asteroid from every angle. Leaders who had spent years arguing shared military tracking data within 11 minutes because their citizens were watching the crown list. Serena broadcast the entire mobilization from the ballroom. Her voice remained steady while screens behind her showed factories waking across every time zone. Lily returned to the front desk. She had not forgiven me. She had simply decided that the end of the world was a bad time to resign. I respected the priority. At 8:43, the orbital engineer arrived through the rooftop eye. She stumbled from the aircraft holding a metal case full of data. Cameras surrounded her. Questions struck from every direction. She looked ready to collapse before she reached the elevator. I cleared the roof with one order. Inside the elevator, I invited her to room 404. The blue display appeared. Largest solvable problem. Accepting responsibility for failing to detect the asteroid sooner. Solvability, 96%. Dream stability, high. Exactly as Grant predicted, the engineer was prepared to dream of an apology while the ocean waited to boil. I took the metal case from her and dropped it down the elevator shaft. She screamed. The case fell 4 floors before the sideways elevator caught it and returned it through the wall behind us. The shock broke her guilt for 1 second. I told her data could be recovered. Time could not. Then I brought her into the ballroom. The crown list was gone. In its place, the entire wall showed the world preparing. A launch crew fueled a rocket in a desert. A satellite company opened control of 4,000 machines. The energy scientists' factories produced cells faster than they could cool. The shipping fleet cleared an ocean lane 3,000 miles long. The water towers built after the drought were converted into radar stations. The floating farms lifted reflective fabric toward cargo aircraft. The underwater tunnel engineer offered pressure systems. The concrete inventor offered heat-resistant material. The mathematician connected every hospital computer recovered from the ransomware attack into the largest calculation network ever assembled. Past miracles returned as tools for the next one. That was the true advantage of my tiny percentages. I had not collected only money. I had collected capability. Every guest who entered room 404 became part of a machine that now covered the planet. I placed the orbital engineer at the center of the ballroom. The people on every screen turned toward their cameras as if they could see her. I told her they were waiting for instructions she had not dreamed yet. The blue display changed. Largest solvable problem, finding a physically possible method to divert the asteroid using the prepared global network. Solvability, 57%. Dream stability, medium. Better. Not enough. The engineer still did not believe a solution existed. She knew the mass of the asteroid. She knew the distance. She knew every rocket on Earth could strike it and barely change its path. Hope could not be ordered. It had to be demonstrated. I took her to the roof. A black sphere the size of a car floated above the landing platform. It was made from dense iron and covered in sensors. I had ordered it built from Marcus's disabled pulse weapon and lifted by magnetic cranes. Across the city, 400 communication dishes turned toward it. The engineer recognized the experiment immediately. If synchronized electromagnetic beams could heat one side of the sphere unevenly, vapor escaping from the surface would create a tiny push. She said the effect would be too small. I told her small was enough if every piece of the sky acted together. The dishes fired. Nothing visible happened. Then the black sphere moved 3 inches. The crowd on surrounding rooftops roared. 3 inches was meaningless on Earth. In space, applied early enough, it could become thousands of miles. The blue display sharpened. Solvability 64%. Dream stability high. Grant stood beside the engineer and asked how much more force would be needed. She began calculating aloud. I had the ballroom screens answer with available power, satellite positions, rocket mass, reflective surface, fuel reserves, and launch windows. Every time she named a requirement, someone somewhere confirmed it could be met. Her guilt vanished beneath engineering. Her fear became work. At 11:40, I led her into room 404. The room had changed for the first time. The black desk was covered with stars. The red clock projected the asteroid's path across the ceiling. The window no longer showed the city. It showed a live telescope image of the black stone growing brighter. I placed no photographs, no threats, and no speeches around her. The world itself had become the trigger. At 11:52, the engineer lay down. Grant checked her pulse. Lily closed the door. Serena ended her commentary and let the live image speak. At 11:58, the asteroid passed in front of a star and erased it for 1 second. The engineer whispered that she could move it. The blue display became clear. Largest solvable problem, designing and coordinating the exact sequence that will divert the asteroid before impact. Solvability, 68%. Dream stability, perfect. The number should have frightened me. A perfect dream did not guarantee an easy answer. It guaranteed only that a correct answer existed and could be shown. The guest could still fail to understand it. Humanity could still fail to build it. The asteroid could still punish one late launch or one frightened leader. 68% was not certainty. It was a door. Midnight arrived. The orbital engineer slept. For 51 minutes, nothing happened. No one in the lobby moved. The world watched a closed black door while a rock crossed millions of miles. At 12:52, the engineer screamed. I entered first. She was standing on the bed, writing equations across the walls with both hands. The dream had given her more information than a waking mind could hold. Diagrams covered the ceiling. Launch times appeared on the floor. Satellite paths wrapped around the room like glowing wire. She spoke in fragments. Do not strike the asteroid head-on. Cut a trench around its equator. Turn the communication satellites into a phased heating ring. Use rockets not as weapons, but as anchors. Wrap the asteroid in a ribbon made from superconducting plates. Spin the ribbon against the asteroid's rotation. Heat one hemisphere. Release iron vapor at the exact moment the moon pulls sideways. The moon would become the lever. The asteroid would miss Earth by less than 1 planetary width. Then the dream showed a final requirement. The synchronized beams needed a focusing lens larger than any object ever launched. It had to be made from thousands of mirrored panels, opened in space, and aligned within less than a second. The only structure with the right segmented design already existed. The orbital engineer looked at me, the Grand Arcadia's rooftop eye. The crown platform, the garden mirrors, the folding walls, and the black glass skin of the upper tower could be dismantled into the exact lens the dream required. Saving the planet meant tearing apart the monument I had built. Grant saw the answer on my face. He asked whether I would do it. I did not hesitate, not because I had become selfless, because a throne means nothing if there is no world beneath it. At 1:10, I ordered the demolition of the Grand Arcadia's upper 30 floors. The same crowds that had watched it rise now watched cranes tear it open. Glass petals folded away from the tower. The rooftop eyes separated into mirrored sections. The garden crown split along hidden seams. Airships carried pieces toward launch sites, while guests evacuated down the sideways elevators. Lily stood beside me as the first black panel lifted into the night. She said I looked angry. I told her I was calculating the reconstruction. She almost smiled. The plan required 8,000 satellites. We had 7,400. It required 112 heavy rockets. We had 89. It required enough superconducting material to wrap a mountain. The energy scientists could produce only 60% in time. The missing resources belonged to companies still controlled by fragments of Marcus's empire. Marcus was held in a secure room beneath the hotel, protected less for his safety than because thousands of former partners wanted to reach him. I went to see him. He sat behind a glass wall wearing the same torn suit from the siege. His empire had shrunk from half the sky to a few locked networks and private launch systems. Those few systems were now the difference between 68% and extinction. Marcus asked whether I had come to bargain. I reminded him of the dream Room 404 had given him. Surviving my destruction required cooperation, confession, and immediate surrender of any asset I demanded to prevent former allies from hunting him. The asteroid had not changed that answer. It had made the answer larger. Marcus understood. He opened the remaining satellite network, released the rockets, and transferred control of the superconducting factories with one spoken order. He asked what percentage of the saved world I planned to charge. I told him nothing for survival. Then I added that the new orbital network would create industries worth trillions after the crisis, and my usual tiny share would apply to every profitable invention built from the dream. Marcus laughed for the first time since his defeat. He said even at the end of the world I was collecting. I told him that was why I would still own the beginning of the next one. By sunrise, the missing satellites joined the network. Construction began across the planet. The dream had given us 9 days of work that should have required 9 years. I turned those days into a contest. The crown list returned, but now it ranked launch teams, factories, research groups, and entire nations by speed. Every completed component moved a name upward. Every delay became public. Millions of people watched progress bars climb across the ballroom wall. Pride accelerated production better than speeches ever could. Rockets rose every hour. Some carried mirrored panels. Some carried coils of superconducting ribbon. Some carried autonomous machines designed in a single night from the engineer's dream. Cargo capsules launched from deserts, oceans, mountain rails, and the half-demolished roof of the Grand Arcadia. The hotel became a vertical cannon, and the sideways elevators were turned upright and connected into one magnetic track. Energy cells lined the shaft. A launch capsule entered through the lobby, rose past room 404, and exploded into the sky at 12 times the speed of sound. The shock wave shattered every remaining window in Marcus's surrounding buildings. Serena called it poetic. I called it efficient. For 6 days, the world built without sleep. The restaurant chain fed launch crews on 5 continents. The silent chef created nutrient cubes that kept workers focused for hours. The concrete inventor poured heat shields that repaired their own launch cracks. The water towers cooled magnetic rails. The floating farms became ocean landing fields. The pilot who once landed on a train taught cargo crews how to catch returning boosters on moving platforms. Every ridiculous miracle fit into the next. Grant watched the network grow and finally understood what I had been building. The Grand Arcadia was never only a line of powerful people waiting for answers. It was a chain. Each solved life became a link I could pull when the world resisted. Grant said I had turned gratitude into infrastructure. I told him he was improving at compliments. He ignored that and pointed to the launch schedule. One rocket was missing. The final anchor had to leave from a northern platform during a 6-minute window. A storm covered the site. Winds tore metal from towers. No aircraft could reach it. If the anchor missed the window, the superconducting ribbon would not close around the asteroid. The orbital engineer said the entire plan would fail. I looked at the projected storm. Then I moved one name to the top of the crown list. The city planner who had turned a wildfire against itself had spent months studying atmospheric pressure after her dream. I connected her to the water engineer, the floating farms, and every cargo airship in the region. Together they built a spiral of warm air using towers, steam, and synchronized engines. The storm twisted around the launch site like water around a stone. For 6 minutes, the sky opened. The final rocket launched through the eye of the storm. The ribbon was complete. The asteroid reached 3 days from impact. Humanity had built the answer. Now the answer had to work. The final 3 days moved faster than the first 7. Rockets reached the asteroid in waves. Some missed by miles and corrected with tiny bursts. Others unfolded into black machines that drilled anchors into the iron surface. Communication satellites left the positions they had held for years and formed a ring wider than the moon looked from Earth. The mirrored pieces of the Grand Arcadia opened between them. From the hotel ballroom, the lens looked like a silver flower blooming in darkness. Every panel had once been a roof, wall, window, or section of the crown above my tower. Now they reflected the sun toward one point on the asteroid's surface. The first test beam touched the iron and created a red mark the size of a city block. The orbital engineer watched the numbers climb. Largest solvable problem, completing the diversion sequence before the final safe window closes. Solvability, 76%. Dream stability no longer mattered. The dream had ended. Execution belonged to us. The superconducting ribbon approached in 12 pieces. Anchor rockets pulled each section around the asteroid while smaller machines welded them together. When the final ends met, the ribbon became a glowing belt around a spinning mountain. The engineer gave the order to begin breaking its rotation. Energy cells discharged through the ribbon. The asteroid shuddered. Dust rose from its surface in a cloud. The stars behind it vanished. For a moment, the black stone looked like it was growing wings. Then Anchor 7 failed. Its drill struck a hollow pocket beneath the surface and tore free. One section of ribbon snapped outward. The entire belt twisted. 2 machines collided and disappeared in a flash. The solvability display dropped, 61%. The control room filled with voices. Engineers shouted different corrections. Satellite owners demanded their machines move away before the loose ribbon cut through them. Military leaders wanted to strike the broken section. The orbital engineer stood frozen as the answer from her dream came apart on the screen. Grant looked at me. He expected a command. I gave none. The dream had shown the correct sequence. That meant Anchor 7's failure was not outside the solution. Either we had built something incorrectly, or we had misunderstood the image. I replayed the engineer's wall drawings from room 404. One diagram showed 11 anchors around the asteroid and a 12th object floating far away. Everyone had assumed the distant object was the final anchor waiting to connect. It was not. It was a counterweight. I ordered Anchor 12 to stop approaching. Its rocket turned and accelerated away from the asteroid while unreeling the ribbon behind it. The loose section tightened. Instead of wrapping the belt evenly, we pulled it into a spiral. The shape matched the trench from the dream. The engineer understood and took control again. She redirected current through the spiral. The ribbon bit into the asteroid's equator like a heated wire cutting ice. Solvability rose to 79%. Grant asked how I had known. I told him the Oracle never wasted an image. Neither did I. The satellites began firing in sequence. Thousands of communication beams crossed space and met inside the Grand Arcadia lens. The flower of mirrors focused them into a moving line of heat. Iron vapor erupted from the spiral trench, creating a jet that pushed against the asteroid's path. The effect was almost invisible. The numbers were not. The predicted impact point moved 18 miles east, then 30, then 80. We needed thousands. The entire network had to continue firing for 13 hours. Every mirror had to remain aligned while the asteroid spun. The ribbon cut and the moon's gravity began pulling sideways. At the 4th hour, a field of debris struck the lens. The fragments were smaller than fists, but they crossed space faster than artillery. 3 mirrored panels shattered, a 4th folded backward. The focused beam widened and lost power. Impact moved back toward the coast. The engineer said the lens could tolerate 2 missing panels. We had lost 4. The only replacement mirrors remained on Earth. The launch window had closed. No rocket could reach the lens before the moon's pull began. For the first time, every person in the control room looked at room 404. Another dream could not help. The room had already granted its answer for the night, and even if it had not, time was now the problem. We did not need a new plan. We needed a mirror in space. Grant asked whether any satellite carried a large reflective surface. The orbital engineer shook her head. Lily looked up at the chandelier. The original crystals still hung above the cracked column. They had survived rain, fire, renovation, the siege, and the demolition of the tower. Each crystal was small, but there were thousands, cut at angles designed to gather light from every direction. One crystal was useless. A cloud of them could become a lens. The magnetic launch shaft still worked, but no capsule could catch the mirror array in time. The distance was too great. Unless the capsule did not need to stop. I ordered the chandelier lowered. Workers tore the crystals free and packed them into 12 thin shells around a core made from the strongest energy cell. The capsule would launch directly through the broken roof, cross the mirror array at extreme speed, and burst 1 second before impact. The crystals would scatter across the missing section. Tiny control charges would orient them long enough to reflect the beam. It was not a repair. It was a shotgun blast made of a hotel chandelier. Serena heard the plan and began laughing on live broadcast. Not because it was funny, because the human mind needed somewhere to put the insanity. Grant calculated the path. The capsule had to launch within 90 seconds. Lily stood beneath the empty chain where the chandelier had hung. She asked whether the magnetic shaft could survive one more full-power launch. I looked at the second core inside the cracked column. The core had been designed to protect room 404 during an attack. Firing the capsule would drain it completely. The hotel's moving defenses would shut down. The sealed foundation around the Oracle room might crack from the recoil. The room itself could be damaged. That was the choice Grant had asked about months earlier. What would I do when 2 problems truly could not both be solved? Protect the source of my power. Or gamble it to protect the world that power ruled? Grant did not say a word. He did not need to. I activated the shaft. The cracked column split open. Blue light poured through the lobby. Every remaining energy cell in the Grand Arcadia connected to the launch track. The floor trembled. Windows shattered across the lower tower. The chandelier capsule entered the elevator. 5. The doors closed. 4. Magnetic rings ignited from the basement upward. 3. Room 404's walls flashed blue. 2. The second core screamed like metal being torn apart. 1. The capsule launched. It crossed the entire hotel in less than a heartbeat and struck the sky with a column of white fire. The recoil split the cracked column from top to bottom. The lobby floor dropped 6 inches. Room 404's door slammed shut. Then the Grand Arcadia went dark. We tracked the capsule from Serena's battery-powered camera. It passed the moon in minutes. The energy core burned itself empty, accelerating until the shell glowed. Ahead, the damaged lens drifted out of alignment. The capsule reached it with 3 seconds left. 2, 1. The shell burst. Thousands of chandelier crystals spread through space. For a fraction of a second, each crystal caught sunlight. The cloud became a shining eye larger than the city. Control charges rotated them. The widened beam narrowed. Light struck the asteroid again. Impact moved east. 100 miles. 500. 1,000. The control room erupted, but the engineer raised both hands. We were not finished. The asteroid's outer shell began to split along the heated trench. Grant noticed first. A fracture raced north from the ribbon. Another crossed it. The iron mountain was not solid. It was several enormous pieces fused together by ancient impact. If it broke apart too early, the pieces would spread. The main body might miss Earth while fragments destroyed cities across half the planet. The dream had shown the trench. It had not shown one asteroid after the cut. It had shown 3. I remembered the engineer drawing 3 black circles beneath the moon. We had mistaken them for stages of the same object. The asteroid split. The largest piece continued toward the Atlantic. A second moved toward the northern continent. A third fragment, smaller but still wider than the hotel district, turned toward the Southern Ocean. The global celebration died in one breath. Solvability dropped to 43%. The main lens could follow only one target. Military systems began calculating strikes on the smaller fragments. None had enough force. Rockets were too far away. Satellites lacked power. Then Marcus's silver rooms appeared on the resource map. The Dream Palace had been designed around 100 scanning chambers lined with flexible reflective material. After his defeat, the rooms had been dismantled and stored. During construction of the asteroid network, I had ordered the silver panels packed into spare cargo rockets. Lily asked why. I told her I disliked waste. The truth was that I had learned from the Oracle. Images were never wasted, neither were defeated enemies. The spare rockets opened near the moon. 10,000 silver sheets unfolded like a swarm of metal birds. They were too small to focus the satellite network, but they could reflect sunlight directly. I divided them into 2 clouds and aimed each at a fragment. The orbital engineer said sunlight alone would not move them enough. Grant looked at the fragments spin. He realized the silver sheets did not need to push, they needed to blind. Both fragments carried tracking beacons drilled into them by early survey machines. Autonomous rockets used those beacons to calculate position. If the reflected light overwhelmed the sensors at the right moment, the rockets would switch to emergency visual tracking and fire correction engines in the opposite direction. We could trick our own anchors into pulling the fragments apart from Earth. It was a plan built from Marcus's fake oracle, Grant's observation, the engineer's dream, and my refusal to discard anything useful. I gave the order. The silver clouds flashed. Tracking sensors vanished inside white glare. Anchor rockets changed mode. Their engines fired. The northern fragment shifted. The southern fragment shifted. One would pass above the atmosphere. The other would strike the moon. That was acceptable. The main body remained. The moon's gravity caught it at 3:17 in the morning on the 9th day. The superconducting ribbon burned white. The satellite ring poured every remaining unit of power into the trench. Iron vapor streamed backward like the tail of a comet. The predicted impact point crossed the coastline. It moved into the ocean, then beyond the ocean. For 3 seconds, the calculations showed a miss. Then 4 satellites overheated and shut down. The beam weakened. The impact line returned to the edge of the planet. We had no replacement power. Every energy cell was empty. Every rocket had fired. Every mirror was open. The Grand Arcadia was dark. The world had given the plan everything it possessed. Everything except the Dream Palace. Marcus's 100 silver rooms had independent power systems built to scan human brains all night. Their batteries were small compared with the asteroid network, but 100 together could provide 90 seconds of beam strength. The control code still required Marcus. He stood in the dark lobby under guard, watching the asteroid approach. His oracle answer had told him to cooperate to survive, but it had not told him he would have to destroy the final valuable piece of his own invention. I gave him the choice. Marcus looked at the dead dream palace on the screen. Restoring it was the last path by which he imagined returning to power. Then he looked at the impact line touching the planet. He activated the batteries. 100 silver rooms burned out at once. The beam brightened. The asteroid moved. 1 mile. 10. 100. The line cleared the atmosphere. At 3:19 and 12 seconds, the orbital engineer said we had done it. Nobody celebrated yet. We watched the black stone grow across the sky. It passed closer than the moon. Tides rose against seawalls. Satellites shook. Night became darker as the asteroid covered the stars, then brighter as the heated trench turned red. For 6 minutes, half the planet could see an iron mountain moving overhead. People left buildings and stood in streets. They watched the end of the world pass without touching them. The northern fragment crossed the atmosphere and burned a golden line from horizon to horizon. The southern fragment struck the moon and created a flash visible in daylight. Dust rose above the lunar surface like a crown. Then the main asteroid moved away. The impact line disappeared. Solvability. 100%. Problem solved. The blue words floated above the ruined crown list wall. I had never seen them before. The world erupted. Ships sounded horns in every harbor. Cities lit towers. Crowds filled streets. Launch crews collapsed beside machines. The orbital engineer sat on the ballroom floor and cried without trying to hide it. Serena's broadcast lost sound because too many people were shouting around her. Lily found me beside room 404. The door had cracked, but the room remained intact. The bed was untouched. The red clock still moved. She asked whether I had known it would survive the chandelier launch. I told her the chance had been 62%. She raised her hand as if she might slap me again. Then she hugged me instead. It lasted only 1 second. That was enough. Grant stood in the broken doorway and said I had finally answered his question. When forced to choose, I had risked the room. I told him not to misunderstand. I had protected the larger source of power, humanity. He said that answer sounded exactly like me. By sunrise, the Grand Arcadia was a shattered tower beneath an empty chandelier chain. 30 floors were gone. The lobby was split. Glass covered the street. The cracked column had become 2 pieces of smoking stone. Yet people gathered outside as if it were a palace. The first dollar I had spent on the building was displayed on the front desk beneath a clear box. Someone placed flowers around it. Someone else left a paper crown like the one thrown at me during the auction. I picked up the crown. This time, I wore it. Serena's camera caught the moment. The image became the symbol of the crisis. The fool who bought a ruin for $1 had used its roof, walls, power, guests, enemies, and chandelier to move a mountain in space. Nobody laughed anymore. Rebuilding began before the asteroid left the moon's orbit. I made the new tower taller, not because it needed to be, because the world had looked down on the Grand Arcadia once, and I disliked unfinished corrections. The orbital network created during the crisis remained in place. It became a system for communication, climate monitoring, asteroid defense, and space construction. New companies formed around the superconducting ribbon, autonomous anchors, magnetic launch shafts, and silver reflector clouds. I charged my usual tiny share on every profitable use born from the dream. 0.1% here, 100th there. The amount sounded harmless until the industries began earning trillions. Within months, I was wealthier than Marcus had been at his peak. But wealth no longer measured my position. Every nation depended on a network built from former guests of room 404. Every major company had someone on the crown list. Every inventor wanted one night. Every leader knew that refusing my call could mean being absent the next time the world needed an answer. I did not become president, king, or emperor. Those titles came with ceremonies, borders, and people pretending to have equal authority. I remained the owner of a hotel. That was higher. Marcus survived, exactly as his dream promised. He kept a small fortune and no empire. He spent his days helping rebuild the satellite network because every powerful enemy he had made preferred him useful. He never asked for another night. His name remained at the bottom of the crown list as a warning that even the richest man in the world could fall below a mechanic. Serena became the voice of the Grand Arcadia without ever admitting she worked for me. She criticized my choices live, defended the hotel from false attacks, and reminded every guest that miracles did not erase responsibility. Her audience grew larger than most national networks. Lily returned her suitcase to the closet. She still challenged me. She still called some of my choices cruel. After the asteroid, I gave her authority to stop one reservation every month without explanation. She asked why I would give anyone that power. I told her a perfect machine needed one part it could not predict. She knew that was almost an apology. She accepted it as the most I was likely to produce. Grant continued climbing the crown list even though his reservation was already fixed. He solved cases, stopped disasters, and refused every offer to move his date sooner. He wanted the full 6 months. He was preparing. So was I. The hotel reopened with 100 floors, but only one guest room. The rest were laboratories, meeting halls, launch stations, gardens, kitchens, studios, and waiting spaces. Billionaires lived in luxury suites across the street, while ordinary applicants walked past them into the lobby. Celebrities scheduled films around their possible reservation dates. Inventors named machines after floor numbers. Politicians measured careers by whether I moved them up or down. The only room key remained in my pocket. Every night brought another impossible answer. A comedian ended a border conflict by dreaming the one joke both leaders found funny. A farmer learned how to grow wheat in salt water and turned abandoned coastlines green. A rescue worker found a way to hear heartbeats through collapsed mountains. A teacher dreamed a method that let children learn new languages through rhythm and movement. The method spread faster than any app, and my small share funded schools built inside the hotel tower. The world became richer, stranger, and more dependent on one midnight door, exactly as I intended. 6 months after the asteroid, Grant's reservation arrived. He entered the lobby alone. No cameras followed him at first. Serena waited in the ballroom. Lily stood behind the front desk. Marcus watched from a distant screen. Every billionaire on the crown list paused whatever they were doing to see whether the man who understood me best would finally enter room 404. Grant had changed. He had given away his open cases. He had repaired every damaged relationship. He had settled every personal fear he could identify. He had spent 6 months removing unfinished problems from his life one by one. He had made himself into a blade with only one edge. I invited him upstairs. The blue display appeared above his head. Largest solvable problem, removing Adrian's control over humanity's most important decisions without destroying the Oracle network he created. Solvability, 97%. Projected value, civilization changing. Dream stability, perfect. For the first time, the system showed me a problem aimed directly at my power with almost certain success. Lily saw my expression and knew. Serena asked whether the reservation would continue. I could have withdrawn the invitation. I could have moved Grant down the list, locked the door, or created another crisis before midnight. 6 months earlier, any of those choices would have protected me. Now the whole world was watching. And Grant had designed his mind so carefully that no fake emergency, personal threat, or public disaster would become larger than me. He had accepted that people might suffer while he slept. He had prepared himself to carry the guilt. He had turned my greatest technique against itself. I led him to room 404. A black desk had been restored. The red clock showed 11:41. The window looked over a city brighter than the one I had seen from the ruined hotel on my first night. Grant sat on the bed. He said the asteroid had proven I could save the world. He also said Marcus had proven I could aim the room at a person until surrender felt like salvation. Both facts were true. His dream would decide which mattered more. I closed the door, then opened it again. Grant raised one eyebrow. I placed the paper crown from the auction on the black desk between us. It represented the day everyone believed I was a fool. It represented the hotel, the room, the waiting list, the siege, the asteroid, and every person who now looked upward when I spoke. I wanted the image inside Grant's mind, not because I expected sentiment to defeat his preparation, because symbols were how the Oracle turned complex answers into action. If Grant dreamed of removing my control, I wanted my rise included in the calculation. I wanted the room to weigh not only the danger I represented, but everything my danger had built. The blue display flickered. Solvability, 95%. A small change. Enough to prove he was not untouchable. Grant smiled. He had noticed my move. Then he reached into his coat and placed a $1 coin beside the paper crown, the same amount I had paid for the Grand Arcadia. He said every empire eventually forgot the price of its first room. The display changed again. Solvability, 98%. His move was better. The red clock showed 11:58. Lily stood beyond the glass wall, ready to stop the reservation with the authority I had given her. Serena held the camera but had not begun broadcasting. The world waited in silence. I could still end the night. Instead, I stepped back. Grant lay down. The room lights dimmed. At 11:59 and 50 seconds, he closed his eyes. I watched the blue words above him and felt the same sharp excitement I had felt when he first stood beneath the cracked column. Marcus had tried to buy my power. The asteroid had tried to erase it. Grant intended to prove the world no longer needed one man above everyone else. He believed the Oracle would show him how. Perhaps it would. But Grant had spent 6 months making me the largest problem in his life. He had forgotten one thing. For 6 months, I had been making him the largest problem in mine. Midnight arrived. Room 404 chose a dream, and I smiled, because the next war would not be fought over who controlled the hotel. It would be fought over which of us the future considered necessary.